Netflix has destroyed anime going forward. At least specifically destroyed MAPPA. And I wanna remind you guys of this article that nobody covered properly except for your boy. I was the only one that covered this the right way. No interference in creative works. Japanese government proposes new policy for anime and gave expansions on the West. Yeah. Remember why I told you guys this wasn't real? This isn't how this works? Remember why I broke down for you guys in video format how Chibi and Asmongold and I think Leaflet, how all these people were wrong in celebrating this because it wasn't what they thought it was? Yeah, bingo, bango, bongo. Look who turned out to be correct. Ya boy, again, every fucking time. What up, Daxonar?
This strengthening partnership reflects our long-held vision of MAPPA as a self-reliant studio on both creative and business fronts. Japanese animation studios should lead with global perspective from planning and development to
Lead with global perspective. Yeah, what part of lead with global perspective sounds like no interference in creative works, Japanese government proposes new policy for anime? None. Because this wasn't the thing to begin with. Leon, I hate to admit it, but you're right. I wanted you to be wrong. I wanted to be wrong too. I don't like that I was right about that, but I was right about that. It was not a piece of legislation. It was not a new bill. All it was a bureaucratic policy change with it. There was nothing to vote on. It was basically just, it was word salad. It was lip service.
International reach and related business ventures. We're committed to working closely with Netflix to build a long-term win-win collaboration. Yikes! This is some bad news to wake up to today. So let's just get right into this. This is the president of Studio MAPPA, the same studio that has animated and adapted the Chainsaw Man series, Jujutsu Kaisen, Hell's Paradise, worked on the final season of Attack on Titan, and various other shows.
Now, to be fair, I haven't seen Hell's Paradise. But everything else he just listed, fucking sucks. Jujutsu Kaisen's garbage. Chainsaw Man is mid at best. Attack on Titan, trash. So, it's not like I care too much in terms of, like this company. Now, MAPPA is a beautiful animation studio. To be fair, all those anime he listed are animated beautifully. They do a good job. They just work on some trash anime, it seems like. But whether I like the products or not, whether I like those anime, the fact that this is happening, the fact that MAPPA is making this Faustian pact with the West is like, it is so, this should make every single anime fan just distraught.
They are a very well-known and well-recognized animation studio, especially in the last 4 or so years. They have become an industry giant, and seeing the president of MAPPA making a comment like this, wanting to focus on global perspective, or in this case, modern and global audiences, is legitimately...
You know what? I wonder something. Let's take a quick look. No, not Google. Sorry, ChatGPT. Does Marubeni Corp in Japan invest in Studio MAPPA? Let's find out. Does Marubeni Corp... There's no clear public evidence that Marubeni Corporation, the large Japanese trading and investment company, they're the DEI firm. The Marubeni Corp is effectively BlackRock in Japan. Trading investment company has directly invested in Studio MAPPA, the well-known anime production studio. Here's what is currently known. All right, that's fair. It's Tokyo-based Japanese studio, major anime. There are no verifiable reports, mainstreams. All right, let's try this. How about investments in Netflix? It says no. Alrighty. I'm sure there's something else at play. I'm sure there's something else at play. Some general articles mention institutional interest in anime invested overall. But nothing specifically tied to MAPPA. Alright, fair enough. Fair enough.
Horrifying, especially when this comment comes out weeks after the actual director of Neon Genesis, Hideaki Anno, said that the audience should be the one to adapt, aka don't focus on the global audience, focus on the people within Japan. And then literally a few weeks after, Hideaki Anno, the director of Eva, said this, we had the Kadokawa CEO emphasize Japan first approach, and even the SAO director himself, Tomohiko, said the exact same thing, that, focusing on a global appeal may lead to failure, adding that Japanese perception of what is liked overseas likely differs from what is actually popular.
I covered this in extensive detail. It's one of the best videos I've ever made, and it was literally just a video I made like 2 weeks ago, and it flopped. No one fucking watched it. It topped out like 500-600 views. People need to check out that video. It is painful.
Overseas. This is just really bad news overall. The fact that the president of MAPPA even said something like this is, I'm going to be honest, in one hand, it's to be expected when you look at everything, the writing on the wall, but on the other hand, it's really bad seeing someone that is leading the charge for anime overseas making a statement like this. This is not good, and honestly, this is only going to lead to...
Guys, I see what you're saying. Oh, the studio's already worked with Netflix, 7 Originals, hey, they're awful to work with. It doesn't matter. That's irrelevant. The point is, if MAPPA is going to be doing this, what is to stop multiple other studios from doing this? What is to stop this change from anime being an intrinsically Japanese medium to it being a globalized, homogenous, assembly line product? All right, MAPPA might just be the first. They will not be the last.
The same exact situation that has plagued the comic industry, plagued gaming, and also plagued Hollywood for a very long time. This is going to be a downward spiral of a lot of properties that MAPPA is going to associate with. And I hate to be a doomer, but honestly, it's the truth, because we have seen time and time again when companies try to focus on a global appeal or global audience, typically when they cater to this group, it's a group that really doesn't exist, and eventually what caused the actual media to be popular to begin with, it no longer has that element to it. And I've said this over and over again, the reason why anime is popular, or manga is popular, is because it is fundamentally different than everything else out on the market. When someone looks at an anime, when someone looks at a manga, they don't, think of, oh, I want something that's exactly like a Western comic. I want something exactly like something from Hollywood. You want something that is exactly like an anime or manga within Japan. That
is irrelevant. That is what people want is irrelevant, because what corporations want is money. And if these corporations think they can get more money via going with this global approach, they don't give a fuck what you want, because they fundamentally disregard you as a consumer, as a customer, as a fan. Yeah, we might lose a few 100,000 fans or whatever, but if we gain a few million, then that 100,000 or so that we lost doesn't matter. That's the way these people think.
Type of culture, that type of storytelling. You don't want storytelling that is grinded down, sanitized, and exactly what you would expect from a Western form of entertainment. And I think that this right here is just such a bad statement. But let's get into how this happened to begin with. So it was announced literally earlier this morning that Netflix and MAPPA are entering new strategic partnership for global anime development and distribution. At first glance, there is some elements to this that is good news, and I don't want to just focus on the negative. There is good about this, even if it is very little,
what up,
and it's not a lot of good news.
LG?
There is some good news to mention. One in particular that comes to this news is that this is 100% a straight up, middle finger to Crunchyroll. Crunchyroll is obviously a monopoly.
Okay, Crunchyroll. But this is not me defending Crunchyroll. I want to make this very clear, because y'all, you know your boy is a Crunchyroll hater. I a diehard hater of Crunchyroll. But I also try to be intellectually honest with you guys. Crunchyroll is not a monopoly. The fact that you can get anime in mass on Amazon and High Dive and Netflix, by definition, Crunchyroll is not a monopoly. Now, this also isn't a fuck you to Crunchyroll, or even if it was a fuck you to Crunchyroll, what does it matter if it's just going to be the same homogenized bullshit, but on Netflix instead? This Netflix is no better in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I would make the argument that from a cultural perspective, Netflix is actually worse than Crunchyroll. And again, your boy a Crunchyroll hater, so I'm not capping for him. But Netflix is possibly worse. At the very least, it's a lateral move.
Crunchyroll has had a monopoly on a lot of anime for a very long time. They are not good for the anime industry, if you want my personal opinion, and I feel like a lot of people are starting to really see that. They have definitely done a lot of damage to just how anime is perceived or how it is done with...
Netflix doesn't, Patrick, you're wrong. When you say most of the Netflix-funded anime never got a second season, that's patently incorrect because you use the term Netflix-funded. Most Netflix original anime are not Netflix funded. They were anime that were already being produced and were already going to be produced and were already produced for the Japanese market that aired on Japanese TV. Carol and Tuesday is an excellent example of this. Carol and Tuesday was a Netflix original anime. It aired in Japan weekly a full fucking year before it was ever on Netflix. It was a Netflix original because Netflix bought the license to it. Netflix doesn't, I'm not saying they never do it, but most of the time, Netflix doesn't directly fund anime. They just buy the license after it's already been funded and created, or is already in the process of being funded and created.
In the West. But the point of the matter is that Netflix, working with MAPPA, one of the biggest industries, or animation studios in the industry, is definitely a big slap to the face for Crunchyroll, because that means that MAPPA, when they work on some big series that are the next big hits, they're going to just straight up give it to Netflix, and Crunchyroll is probably not going to get any of these simulcasting rights or anything like that, which means it's a huge profit loss for Crunchyroll. Which
no, it is not a profit loss for Crunchyroll. For something to be a profit loss, they had to have the product and then lost the product, therefore losing the revenue stream it would have continued to generate. If they never had it to begin with, they didn't lose it. You can't lose what you didn't have. Nobody's going to be like, oh man, I was going to sign up for Crunchyroll, but then I found out that Studio MAPPA anime aren't on Crunchyroll, and so now I'm not going to get it. I'm going to get Netflix instead. That's not how people operate. Again, Chibi is wrong here at the fundamental, just the basic business level.
Which means, at the end of the day, that's kind of a win, honestly. That means that they finally have competition, which
they have always had competition. Crunchyroll's always Netflix invested heavily in procurement of anime years before Crunchyroll. Netflix is one of the, and again, this isn't to cap for Netflix either, because I don't like that this became a thing, but Netflix is probably the second most important thing to Toonami. If we're done chronologically, Toonami is what made anime big in America, right? Yeah, you had stuff on the Sci-Fi Channel. Yes, you had some movies. Yeah, you had some Saturday morning cartoons with Pokemon and whatnot. But Toonami is what really, laid the groundwork. And then after Toonami, Netflix was the second step. And then after Netflix, you had Crunchyroll start to take a foothold. So, Chibi he is discounting Netflix's influence on the popularity of anime in the West. And I see a lot of people do this. And I don't know if it's because people are tourists or because they weren't watching anime at the time. They weren't around. They weren't in the scene. Netflix was going hard when it comes to anime on the platform and really presenting anime on the platform in 2009.
Means that they might have to innovate, they might have to try to change and be better as a company to be able to stop Netflix's growth within the anime industry. But that's where the good news kind of ceases, because anyone that is affiliated with Netflix, you even if you live under a rock, I think you are aware of this, but Netflix has a huge issue with a variety of things. Not when it just comes to anime, but just how they deal with properties to begin with. For one, Netflix has lost licensing for shows, and this is something that happens not just with Netflix, but a lot of different companies in different forms of media. But Netflix has lost shows here and there, licensing to streaming rights or whatever, and these shows go, out, you can no longer find these shows legally. You can't go out of your way and legally watch these shows anymore on any different streaming platform.
Again, Chibi is over-exaggerating this. Does Netflix lose the license for certain things? Yes. A lot of times it's because a new streaming service pops up who also had the license. Let's take The Office, for example. The Office is owned by Paramount. When Netflix had The Office for years, and then Paramount Plus started, Paramount didn't renew the license with Netflix because Paramount wanted people to sign up to Paramount Plus. How are you gonna get people to sign up to Paramount Plus? You put The Office, a show that you own, on that platform to get people to come watch it there. So now there are some shows here and there that get lost off Netflix or any streaming service that just aren't available in any other streamer. That does happen. But this isn't specifically a Netflix thing, and oftentimes the stuff that get lost from Netflix do end up on other streaming services.
Because the licensing has just ran out and no one has felt bothered to purchase the licensing once again. And obviously anime probably works in the exact same way. Well, it does. Correction. It does work in the exact same way. You have licensing for different shows. And let's say some of these shows that MAPPA gets or works on for Netflix gets them, and let's say these licensing runs out eventually, okay? That means that those shows will eventually leave Netflix's platform, and if nobody else picks up those licensing thanks to certain deals or something behind the scenes, then those series are effectively gone. The only...
We're talking about a hype... Look, MAPPA is signing an exclusivity deal with Netflix. Even if what Chibi is saying is a possibility, even if that happens, it will not be for many, many, many years. The problem we need to be focusing on here is the homogenization and the globalization of anime, and it being made with a global audience in mind instead of a Japanese audience. That, like, stay on target. What's being talked about right now is completely irrelevant.
Only way to actually watch them would be through illegal means, and that's if they're preserved. Obviously, there is always a chance they're not preserved, which means that they could theoretically become lost media. But even if that's not the case, I mean, literally I covered this 2 days ago, but you have piracy sites that are always getting struck down and removed and all that, and the reason why this is inherently an issue is because these companies, when they strike down these platforms and stuff, these sites that have a lot of pirated content, there's content on there that are just not licensed. You're not able to legally obtain these series anymore. You're not able to legally read or watch these series anywhere, so you have to go through illegal means to be able to actually watch or read them. And that's theoretically what could happen to some of these shows, that eventually, as the passing of time continues, these shows will be lost. Now that is a problem for maybe years upon years in the future, but it's still a problem. But getting back into the main point, we have seen that Netflix also arbitrarily removes shows here and there. I believe they have also even removed some of their Netflix originals from their platform, which technically Netflix should own. They've never been anywhere else, but they've removed them off their platform, which means that if something like that can happen, it could definitely happen to some of these MAPPA shows that are put onto the platform. So it's just like I said, it's not good news. Like, Netflix in general, just from that perspective, is very bad for the future of anime. But obviously, I could go a little bit deeper. Netflix is also very well known for how they release their shows. They love to release their shows in bulk batches, which is, I think, inherently a bad thing for anime. For one reason, it kills discussion. And
okay, here Chibi is correct. Chibi is correct here. Netflix does have a track record of releasing an entire season at once. You binge it, and yeah, that does kill discussion. I am quite fond of the weekly viewing process of anime. Like if we look at, here's everything I'm watching weekly right now. I'm watching, not this. I'm just casually watching this. This is an old one. Kaya-chan Isn't Scary. Frieren, Sentenced to Be a Hero. I'm watching all three of these weekly right now, and I like that I am watching them weekly because we get to hang out and talk to friends and discuss them, all that. So like, the idea of Netflix releasing this shit in batches is a problem. Absolutely is a problem. But Netflix is also, I believe, done weekly releases. Has Netflix done weekly releases? In fact, no, I know they've done weekly releases for anime, because when they did Delicious in Dungeon, that was a weekly release. Delicious in Dungeon was a weekly release on Netflix. So we honestly might not. There's a chance we'll still get weekly releases for whatever MAPPA puts on Netflix, because Delicious in Dungeon Out for Fat was released weekly on Netflix.
And hype around certain moments in episodes, because it's like, if an entire season, let's say 10, 12 episodes of a season comes out, then everybody's going to be discussing basically the beginning and then most likely the ending of that season, and the discussion of it's more or less going to die down probably about a few days because everybody's already watched it, and that's about it. People are moving on to the next thing. But if a series is coming out on a weekly basis, there will be more conversation around it. And I think a really good example of this actually is something Netflix recently did was Stranger Things. I mean, yes, we've all probably seen the memes and stuff. It's like, I don't like girls and all that. Oh, am I getting into that conversation? I'm mad as a straight.
I never thought about it. But does Chibi Reviews not kind of look like Will from Stranger Things? Like, I don't like girl. Like, I like Chibi. I'm not dogging on him, right? I'm not knocking him. But he kind of does look similar.
Stranger Things fan, okay? That was not good. Not a good ending for Stranger Things. But the point is that Netflix, they did release the final season of Stranger Things in kind of little batches. It wasn't perfect, like episode by episode, but they released them in batches, which did give a lot more discussion to Stranger Things over an entire month than, let's say, oh, it's only discussed for a day or two, and that's basically it. And in the end, maybe Netflix wishes that the discussion of it would have died in a day, because obviously it's been nothing but memes, cope, and negativity around the series thanks to what they did with the final season. But the point of the matter is that it's definitely evident. You can definitely see that when a series is released in, like, you know, spread out like episode releases, there's more discussion and the series has a chance to reach wider audiences, more people to come in and talk about a series and kind of get a good feel of how the community is really feeling about something and if it should continue or not. And so Netflix, their approach to how they release anime has always been with batches and bulk, and I think it's just not good. It's not good for the common watcher of anime.
I don't know if that's true either, because I'm pretty sure. How did Netflix release Carol and Tuesday? I'm pretty sure they released it in two separate. I mean, yeah, first half episodes 1 through 2 available. Yeah, so it released these in the second half after that. Yeah, and then the English dub premiered globally in August 2019. Second half following later. So they did similar things they did to Stranger Things. Now, again, I prefer the weekly method. I do. I prefer the weekly method, absolutely. But when Netflix released Carol on Tuesday, it was also already out to completion. So the question is going to be, is Netflix releasing these series weekly simulcast with the releases in Japan? If so, I mean, that's what they did with Dilution Dungeon. I don't really think we have anything to worry about in that regard. Again, the biggest problem is still the globalization aspect.
Because people don't really like that type of stuff. I don't like it. I know there's a lot of people that do not like that. They want to be able to talk and discuss this series on a weekly basis with their friends because it is fun. Half of the fun of watching anime or reading a manga chapter is being able to discuss it with the community. That's how I've always felt. I know not everybody's going to share that exact same opinion as me, but I feel like that's a very powerful driving force to the community for anime and manga. But that is another example of Netflix and why it's not good that this partnership is happening. But now we need to get into the MAPPA situation on this. So MAPPA, I've talked about them over and over till, I was blue in the face. For instance, they are a company that has abused their workers. There is a lot of stories about them.
An anime company that's abused their workers?
I am shocked. Shocked! Well, not that shocked.
Sorry, I feel like it's par for the course.
Being a sweatshop and all sorts of horrific stuff within their studio, and they have went on record to try to say they're trying to correct this issue. And I've also talked about this isn't just a Studio MAPPA issue, it's basically every studio within Japan besides a select few. But more or less, MAPPA is a big focus and they're in the spotlight often because they are a studio that gets such massive series, such mass global appeal that obviously people are going to talk about them more in terms of how they treat their employees than, let's say, a random studio that people don't really know or even aware of that work on certain anime. So that's the point I'm getting at, is that MAPPA, they are someone that is leading the charge. They have an image, and the fact that they are doing something like this, and they have been very popular and successful as of late, I feel like is going to be a domino effect that leads other different animation studios to follow their lead and try to appeal to a global audience and miss the understanding of what makes anime so popular to begin with. It's really
Finally, back on target. The problem is we're back on target when there's only a minute and a half left of the video. But yes, the domino effect is absolutely what we need to worry about. Because again, I'm going to take it back to this. No interference in creative works. Bullshit. In no way, shape, or form. There's no evidence to lead us to the conclusion whatsoever that Netflix is not going to interfere. In fact, there's evidence to the contrary. Nearly every single creative work that Netflix has partaken in some way, shape, or form, they have had interference with. I can't think of an example where they haven't had some sort of creative interference. Like, the Avatar The Last Airbender creators left the production of the live-action series due to meddling from Netflix. So yeah, Netflix is they're going to request changes, alterations, censorship, whatever the localization may end up being. Like, this is catastrophic. Yeah, Squid Game Season 2 they interfered with. This is catastrophic. The idea that it's just going to be like, oh, MAPPA's going to make their shit and it's going to go on Netflix, it's going to be an exclusivity deal. No, that is not the case whatsoever. That was never going to be the case. And then, if it's successful, if it makes money, if there is any sort of economic factor that is a positive for Studio MAPPA and for Japan, you're going to see other studios make this leap.
really bad. It's very clear that MAPPA is shifting gears into more.
They did try to remove Rebecca from Edge Runners. Now, the creators of Edge Runners said no, and they fought Netflix, and they eventually won, and that's dope. But how often is that going to be the case? Like that is a rare W, at least by everything I've seen. That is a rare W. So I don't think that will be a constant theme we see going forward.
More of a corporate slash like trying to make as much money as possible, and the warnings and the red flags have been there for a while, especially with Manabu. If you've read any of this man's interviews and stuff over the years, it's very clear that he is more focused on making as much money as possible than anything else. But at the end of the day, that is the job of a company to do. But it's clear that it's shifting into the exact same issue that's happened in the gaming industry, where they seek profit.
Yeah, Daxnar. Netflix wanted Rebecca either removed or completely altered so that she wasn't a lolly character because, of the implications of what a lolly character is and stuff like that.
In record-breaking profits and numbers over actually why they started to make profits to begin with. It's not good, and I just feel like this is a pretty dark day for the anime industry, honestly. There's really not much good news to really pull from this, and that's just my honest takeaway from the entire situation. I'll leave it at that, though. I wanted to talk about this. I thought this was pretty crazy, especially after the comments from Hideaki Anno, the Kadokawa CEO, and the director of SAO, being basically against something like this, and then this happens. It makes you kind of wonder if the reason why they made those statements is because they heard something in the industry, aka what MAPPA was doing with Netflix, and maybe that is why they said something like that. It's very likely because obviously they would probably have connections within the industry and be able to talk with some people and probably know this deal is happening. I could definitely see maybe the reason why those were stated was because of this. I could be wrong, no evidence to back that up, but it's possible. Anyways, be safe, stay healthy, I love you guys.
Yeah, so here's the video. I'll link it below. I wish Chibi had stayed on target more. Like, I'll be real. I don't care about the batch releases. I don't care about whether it's all released at once, whether it can be removed in 7 years. It's not that I don't care. Those are all valid concerns to have. But the big takeaway is, none of that shit matters if the anime is intrinsically altered and changed from its original state for the global audience. Why would I give a fuck if Netflix releases a 12-episode anime if it's instead of doing it weekly, if it's all going to be butchered to hell because of the globalization aspect anyway? Why would I care if 7 years from now a MAPPA anime is removed from Netflix and isn't hosted on any other streaming site? If the anime was treated like dog shit for globalization efforts to begin with. It's absolutely mind-blowing to me that the Japanese are okay with this. But again, the reason the Japanese are okay with this is because we have been seeing massive investments from people like BlackRock and State Street and whatnot into the Japanese market. This is catastrophic, and I don't know what studio's next, but I do think you're going to see other studios do this. I do. Man, if Madhouse goes this route, I don't even know what to say, man. Madhouse is the best in the biz. They're my favorite animation studio. They've been the best in the biz since like the fucking 70s. I don't think Toei would do it. I think Toei got their fingers in the pie of Crunchyroll, and they'll probably stay there. But maybe Studio Orange. I wouldn't be surprised if Studio Orange does. Yeah. All in all, this is catastrophic. I'm terrified, and we'll see where other news comes from. I hope that we get to see the Japanese creative